House File number 680, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to game and fish, the first engrossment.
The member from Scott, Representative Tabke, to your bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Today we have a hunting bill before us, House File 680. This hunting bill will affect and promote the recovery of wounded deer and bear throughout the state of Minnesota. This is a bill that was brought to me by a constituent who happens to be colorblind, and he has a hard time tracking blood trails for wounded deer while he is hunting, and so he cannot see. He's red-green colorblind and cannot follow the trail, and so if he happens to lose a deer, it will be very difficult to recover it. So what this bill allows to happen is a hunter can use a trained dog on a 30-foot leash in order to follow the trail of a deer or bear to recover that game throughout the state of Minnesota. This bill was written in conjunction with the DNR. Vast majority of the language is from the DNR, so we worked really well with the DNR and many Republican members to get this done. It also has the support of the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, the Bluffland Whitetail Association, and many different hunting groups. So I appreciate everyone's support on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hertaus moves to amend House File number 680, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A19-0245.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Hertaus.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment addresses the issue with regard to private property rights. The amendment does not oppose or change using the use of dogs in tracking for deer or bear that are wounded that would be on public lands or other lands that you might find available in terms of access, but it would require permission on private land. Members, the reason that this is of concern for those of you who are familiar with deer hunting, it is a very prized and treasured time of year, one of which is approached with great anticipation about going hunting and preserving a tradition that has been part of our heritage in Minnesota. In particular, if you're not a deer hunter, what's important to understand is that the least amount of intrusions onto land or property is an issue when you're out there in your stand on opening morning. Imagine, if you would, that you're in your deer stand and then all of a sudden a gentleman with Spunky on his leash is looking for a wounded deer. Unfortunately, you cannot control the behavior of the dog even if it's leashed. One thing that is very bad for deer hunting is to have a canine marking the area around where you want to hunt. So if any of you have witnessed your neighbors taking their dog for a walk, seeing every time it lifts its leg and marks an area, this is the very thing that will happen in the woods on private property. So I ask you to support the amendment. I ask you to support private property rights. Thank you.
Discussion to the amendment. The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if Representative Tabke would yield for question.
Representative Tabke will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tabke, are you supportive of Representative Hertaus's amendment, or what's more important here? Is it property rights, or is it the ability for somebody to bring their dog into the property?
Representative Tabke.
Representative Drazkowski, thank you very much for the question. The current law states that, except as provided by subdivision 3, a person on foot may, without permission of the owner, occupant, or lessee, enter land that is not posted under subdivision 4 to retrieve a wounded animal that was lawfully shot. The hunter must leave the land immediately after retrieving the wounded game. So I appreciate the amendment, but I believe that this bill does not intend to change current law as it relates to retrieving game that has moved on to private property. So I do not support the amendment.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Tabke. Well, the difference, Representative Tabke, here is, as Representative Hertaus has pointed out, the hunter is going to be bringing their dog onto the land. And if you're a hunter, I don't know if you're a hunter or not, that's not very kosher. And it just doesn't work out well. And you may have invested an entire day or several days straight hunting that land to have it all spoiled by somebody bringing their dog on board. Property rights is a fundamental right, Representative Tabke, Madam Speaker, members, and for us not to respect those rights we're putting something into law here. Are we going to respect the property rights of law-abiding Minnesota property owners first, or is that going to be second to somebody who wants to bring their dog in order to trail a wounded animal? That's what we have here with this amendment. Members, Representative Tabke, Madam Speaker, I think Representative Tabke is wrong on this. I think Representative Hertaus is right. I encourage you to support Representative Hertaus' amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'll just speak against the Hertaus amendment. It's the idea with this bill, I don't know if how many folks have actually read the bill, is that you would only be using the dog if you already have a wounded animal. This isn't going to open up the door for any old person to trespass with any kind of dog. It's limited specifically to the situation where you have wounded big game and you're trying to track that big game. It's been longstanding conservation law that on property that's not posted, if you do have a wounded animal, you are able to go after, to go find that wounded animal without first asking permission. As you can imagine, there are time constraints when you're trying to track down a wounded animal. There are already protections within the law as far as if you have the land posted. This bill doesn't change anything. You still have to follow those laws. So I think actually as an attorney who's also a legislator and a deer hunter, I think this amendment actually confuses things from kind of long-standing deer hunting law. So I would oppose the amendment and encourage folks to vote no on the amendment.
The member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The more I listen to this discussion, I have to agree with the amendment that Representative Hertaus is discussing. My son's an avid hunter, and they go out there with cameras, and they really make sure that the scents are pure and clean, and there are no other scents in the land they're going to hunt on. In the trespass law says you can go on private land to track the deer. It doesn't say you can take your dog on that land to track the deer. I think that's the big difference here. I understand tracking a wounded deer. I support that. But taking a dog on private land without permission, I think is an infringement on property rights, and I stand to support the Hertaus amendment.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the author of the amendment yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Considine.
Thank you. Representative Hertaus, does your concern for private property rights include requiring trappers to ask permission before they trample on people's private property?
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question, Representative Considine. No, this bill is talking about hunting of deer and bear, not trapping deer and bear, so it doesn't apply to that question.
Representative Considine.
Thank you. I thought we were talking about private property rights and not going on people's land and what you can and cannot do. How about Representative Drazkowski yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Considine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Drazkowski, again, same question.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Considine, I have the bill in front of me. It's House File 680. Do you have it in front of you? If so, that's what we're discussing here today. We're talking about tracking bears or deer that happen to have been wounded with a dog onto private land without the private landowner's permission. That's the question before us today. So a green vote means, on the amendment, means you value private property rights above the ability for some individual who wounded an animal to come onto your land with a dog and mess up your entire hunting day. A red vote means you would like somebody with a dog to be able to come onto your land without your permission and wreck your hunting day, and that's more important than private property rights. Thank you, Representative Considine. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Drazkowski. Yes, that's what the bill does, but the amendment specifically talked about property rights. And again, as it stands in Minnesota right now, trappers can access people's private property without even asking them. And that was the question. Thank you.
Further discussion to the amendment. The member from Wright, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I wonder if the bill author would yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I've been listening to this discussion, deciding if I'm going to support this amendment or not, one thing came to mind, and that is dangerous dogs. I know that there's a lot of regulation around dangerous dogs, both on the local level and state level. Is there anything that would prohibit, if your bill were to become law and a hunter using a dog to cross onto private property, would it allow that hunter to be using what would be classified as a dangerous dog?
Representative Tabke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lucero, we are not talking about just any dog. So you can't take my my rescue dog that is about as mutt of a dog as you can possibly get out to track deer or bear, and to do that in this case. What we're talking about are highly trained dogs that are trained to do this work. And generally, as we talk to people about this, people think it's spaniels and your typical hunting dogs, but generally the types of dogs that do this very specific trained work are beagles and dachshunds are the two major dogs that are used to do this type of tracking work. So no, I don't think the dachshunds are generally termed as dangerous dogs, but these are highly trained dogs that are used for this type of work.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and if the bill author would continue to yield.
He will yield. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as you just answered the question, highly trained, and typically it's one breed or another breed. Is there anything in your proposed language that would require any training whatsoever, any breed whatsoever, or would a hunter be able to take any breed with or without any training?
Representative Tabke.
Madam Speaker and Representative Lucero, no, the bill does not specify specifically exactly what types of breed or training levels are necessary, but I trust that hunters know what needs to happen in order to recover the game and to find the deer and bear that is the goal of this bill.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So as I'm listening to the answers there from the bill author, there are no requirements on what kind of dog, what breed of dog would be permitted. If there's any training requirements whatsoever, there are zero, as we just heard admitted. I have a large concern then with state law permitting a dog to cross over onto somebody's private property rights without their permission. And based on those answers, I think it is important, and it could be a dangerous dog. There's no requirements prohibiting that. It's completely up to the hunter, whom the private property owner may not know. And so I think the amendment offered by Representative Hertaus would be important to allow a private property owner to decide if they want to allow a dog to cross onto their private property rights. So, Madam Speaker and members, I would highly encourage a green vote on the Hertaus amendment. Thank you.
The member from Cottonwood, Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have many absentee landowners. Would the author of the amendment please yield? Representative Hertaus.
Representative Hertaus will yield. Representative Hamilton.
Thank you. Representative Hertaus, it makes a big difference whether or not the land is posted or not posted on whether or not I'm going to support this. Does this pertain specifically to posted land? and/or would it apply to both posted and unposted land?
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Hamilton, under current law, agricultural land, which is clearly agricultural, would require, as I understand the law, would require permission to enter upon the land. For those individuals that own private land that is both agricultural and woodland, the wooded portion would have to be posted to prohibit this. So without the posting, it would require permission from the, or with posting, excuse me, would require permission from the landowner.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Lucero. The representative from Blue Earth, Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Can't think of a fast comeback to that one. Would the author of the bill yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tabke, I have concerns around this bill as well. I live out in the country and have 20, 30 acres of wooded land. And I understand the posting requirements are, if I understand, it's about every 50 feet. And we post the signs, they fade over time. And if a hunter puts his blinders on and doesn't see the signs and comes onto the property thinking he has right, we've got two big dogs that live outside on our property, 120-pound white German Shepherd, and we have a couple of big dogs. We also have coyotes on our property, but we have a person walking onto our property armed with a gun, and I fear that they could shoot my dog. What would happen under your bill if the hunter shoots my dog or my dog attacks this person defending our property and causes harm to this hunter? Would the homeowner would be liable? It's my understanding they would be, but if you could answer the question.
Representative Tabke.
Madam Speaker, thank you, Representative Munson. I think it's important to remember here that these dogs are only on a leash. That is the only way that you can take dogs through this entire bill or onto private property. And no, it is not legal, or you do not have the ability to shoot a private person, a private homeowner's, landowner's dog.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Representative Tabke. I guess the question was really about my dog, who's not on a leash, who runs around our property freely but knows its boundaries, attacking a hunter coming onto the property, and the liability being on the homeowner, who has no idea somebody's coming onto my property armed with a gun. And I fear that this might cause liability for a property owner. Could you speak to that?
Representative Tabke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, the law currently states that you are able to go onto private property to recover wounded game. So nothing in the law is changed whatsoever with regard to that.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Something is changing in the law, and that's that you're bringing an animal onto the property. My dog may be trained not to attack an individual, but if there's a dog on the property that's unfamiliar, that's where my concerns are. You say it has to be a highly trained dog. I think that's up to interpretation of the law enforcement officer that would be called after this. And I don't know if there's no specific dog mentioned in the bill. It doesn't say it's a wiener dog or the dachshund that you'd mentioned. It could be the Minnesota State dog. I don't know what it is, but any dog that would be trained or not trained to come on the property, as long as they're on a leash, I'm apprehensive about this amendment. So thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Tabke.
Any further discussion to the Hertaus amendment? Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the author of the bill yield again?
He will. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tabke, so Representative Munson's scenario. So I'm hunting under your bill without Representative Hertaus's amendment on it. That's what we're debating right now. And I'm bringing my dog on a leash, and I'm on your property, and you don't even know I'm there. You have a big dog, like Representative Munson mentions, that comes and wants to protect your family, your little kids, and anybody else on your property like they normally would, first starts flying, maybe I get injured by your dog, or maybe I shoot your dog in self-defense, who gets to pay?
Representative Tabke.
Madam Speaker, Representative Drazkowski, I again want to reiterate that this law does not change people's ability to go onto property. If Representative Munson has multiple dogs on the property that are going to attack you or your dog, that is how the current law works. This is not changing that law.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the author would yield again.
He will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So Representative Tabke, in that scenario, do you admit that there is a legal liability that would present itself? Would someone be open to being sued?
Representative Tabke.
Madam Speaker and Representative Drazkowski, I am not a legal scholar on this matter, so this is not changing the current law as it is today. So as it is, precedent has been set. That is what will continue with this law.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Tabke, as would happen any other place, in any other piece of law, when somebody's dog hurts somebody else or destroys their property or injures their property, that's ripe for a lawsuit. And that's the position you are defending with your bill, or with your position against Representative Hertaus's amendment. You are keeping uncertainty about who would be open to lawsuit. And it's going to complicate the law. It's going to put the owner in a position that they never had any control of, or never could have estimated would even happen. So, Representative Tabke, I urge you to change your position on Representative Hertaus's amendment. It's a good amendment. It brings clarity to your bill and makes it a much better bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just want to make one more point. As I continue to listen to this conversation, Representative Tabke continues to say that the scenario, the law isn't changing that currently allows people to cross onto private property. And I find those answers to be rather evasive. And the reason I say that is because the dynamics change radically when you have a dog with you. And I know that those dog owners in the body here, imagine the scenario. Have you ever gone for a walk in your neighborhood without your dog? And you're able to walk by some of your neighbors' houses who also have dogs, and there's no commotion. But then have you taken your dog for a walk in the neighborhood, and you have other dogs that are now, the dynamics have changed, because another dog might not find you threatening as an individual, but find the dog that's with you on a leash threatening. And I've specifically had my wife take a walk in the neighborhood, as she normally does, and she was walking our dog. And the neighbor's dogs actually saw our dog, came running, crossed off of the property, and were aggressive because our dog was with her. And so please recognize that you're changing the dynamics significantly by allowing a dog to accompany the hunter onto a property. And the scenarios that Representative Munson and Drazkowski are laid out are very real. And you can allow the private property owner's dog that could become aggressive toward the dog now that's on the property that the private property owner doesn't even know is there. And I just find the answers to be rather evasive and failing to even allow any consideration to the points that are being brought up here in the great point that Representative Hertaus is trying to solve. Allowing the private property owner the knowledge of what's happening. So it is much more than current law of allowing a person to cross over. So thank you, Madam Speaker. And once again, I would encourage a green vote on the Hertaus amendment. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I've been listening to this conversation, and it sounds like the dangerous animal is the dog. But as I understand it, the dangerous animal is the wounded bear. And what I understand, if the Hertaus amendment were to go on, in this situation that you talked about, you couldn't track that wounded bear. I understand from Representative Becker-Finn that that's something that would weigh heavily on a hunter. And so I think, members, we're talking about a scary dog when we really should be talking about a wounded bear.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to make sure I heard that right, Representative Lucero. You sent your wife out to find out if it was dangerous around the neighborhood? I guess I did.
Any further discussion to the Hertaus amendment? Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the author yield for a few questions, please?
The author of the bill will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tabke, are you a deer hunter?
Representative Tabke.
Point of order.
State your point of order.
Mason's 124. It's the matter before us and not the individual in question.
Members, I am sorry I was distracted because I understand that there's a member over here that wished to be recognized that I did not see, so I did not hear what was said, so I will not rule on the point of order, but I would advise members to please keep in mind Mason's 124. Representative Hertaus, if you had a question for the author of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tabke, I had a question for you. Have you ever hunted deer?
Representative Tabke will yield. Representative Tabke.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Representative Hertaus, we had a great conversation yesterday. This is a bill that was brought to me by constituents, and no, I am not an avid deer hunter, and this is a constituent-led bill that I'm carrying upon their behalf.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would he continue to yield?
He will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tabke, how long is the firearm deer season?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Representative Hertaus? I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat your statement?
Madam Speaker, I asked the author of the bill if he knows how long the deer hunting season is.
Representative Tabke.
Madam Speaker and Representative Hertaus, I do not believe that has anything to do with your amendment. It is not necessary to go down this path. I am very clear and aware that I am not a avid deer hunter. I'm a camper, and I enjoy the outdoors in that direction. And so I do not believe that we should be heading down this path with this discussion. Thank you.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Eklund yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Eklund, are you a deer hunter?
Representative Eklund.
Thanks. Thank you for the question, as often as I can.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you. If he would continue to yield.
He will. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Eklund, could you tell the body a little bit what it's like to get ready for the deer season, the preparations that you take, the steps that are necessary to prepare for opening day?
Representative Eklund.
I'm getting a lot of help over here. We set cameras. We make sure we wear rubber boots. When we put our scent out, we wear rubber gloves, or sterile gloves. We do all the necessary things we can to do to not have our scent in the woods. And my dog stays home.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If he would continue to yield.
He yields. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Eklund, How long is the deer season, the firearm deer season?
Representative Eklund.
16 days in northern Minnesota.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, that's correct where Representative Eklund hunts, but some areas of the state, the firearm deer season is a single weekend. So you wait and anticipate and prepare for an entire year. You do the preparation that's necessary. You go out and do a little bit of scouting. You make sure your stand is in place. If it's private property, it can be a permanent stand, but you check it out to make sure it's safe. You may set some attractant or something of that nature. And it's really it's one of the few rituals left that we as modern man have. Anybody who hunts in deer camp knows where your buddies will be on the first Saturday of November. So my point is that there is a great deal of energy and effort that goes into this. Now, members, when you hunt bear, you don't just go hunting bear. You bait for bear. You spend weeks in advance baiting for bear. Madam Speaker, I'd appreciate if the author would be paying attention.
Representative Hertaus, I believe another member was asking him about the bill. Representative Tabke, will you yield to a question? Representative Hertaus, he will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you. So when you're hunting bear, you spend a great deal of time and effort in baiting for bear. The bear season isn't even during the regular firearm season. What I'm really concerned about here with this amendment, and I thought I was pretty clear to you, and I thought maybe I had your support when you took the courtesy to come and visit with me. I appreciate that, Representative Tabke. But the firearm season is a very limited time. It's not something where you have discretion to go whenever you want. That's not the way regulated hunting seasons work here. So you might have land that you get to hunt one weekend. You might have a job and have to support your family, so maybe you don't hunt during the week, but you can come back a second weekend. There are parts of the state that are open for 2 weekends, and where Representative Eklund hunts, he can hunt for 3 weekends. So this issue really is about preserving all of that which you prepare for going deer hunting and making sure that the environment is the most conducive to hunt deer. In Minnesota, it is legal and it's permissible to plant food plots to aid in wildlife and wildlife production. Many property owners go through quite a bit of effort for deer management, all for 1 weekend a year, or maybe 2. So there's been a lot of questions about what is my amendment about. The big deal here is bringing a dog, a canine, who will mark your property while somebody is entering your property without necessarily your consent or even knowing about it. Until suddenly, I might have shot a deer on opening morning, and we allow party hunting in Minnesota. So I may have dragged a deer through the woods, and that deer that I dragged through the woods leaves a scent. And it might be one of the best trails coming into a deer stand. And so now here comes somebody with a dog on a leash, doesn't even know you're there, doesn't even know you're up in the tree. And the dog comes along and smells not the trail that they think they're tracking, but now is on the trail of a deer that you've shot. And this dog will follow the trail and probably come right up to your stand. Now, anybody in this body who's ever hunted deer, and if you've hunted on public land, you've probably had the occasion where you've been walking or stalking and you've actually come very close to another hunter without that hunter even knowing that you've been there. And that's precisely my point. Somebody who's on the ground may be looking for tracks or whatever and not looking up in the sky, up in the trees where a deer hunter is. So when a canine enters private property, what you're doing is you're asking the burden to be on the property owner to post property. Madam Speaker, would Representative Considine yield for an question?
Representative Hertaus, you had requested that Representative Tabke yield. He said he would yield. Did you still want Representative Tabke to yield? Or did you have a different question for a different
No,
member?
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. He can answer.
Representative Tabke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Hertaus. Yes, while I may not be a hunter, I am really good at listening and learning and talking to
Can
people.
you speak into the mic?
Oh, thank you very much for that. So in preparation for this bill, I talked to a lot of people because I didn't want to be caught off guard here with my lack of knowledge firsthand knowledge of hunting. And so as I talked to people, I learned a lot about this process and what happens when you are using a dog to track deer. And so this bill, as I stated earlier, is highly supported and had a resolution passed by the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, the Bluffland Whitetail Association, and a variety of hunting organizations that support this bill as written. And just to make sure that everyone understands what happens when a dog is used to track a deer or a bear or any type of wounded game, you do not do this immediately. So if you shoot a deer, whether that be with bow and arrow, whether that be with firearm, you do not go and track that deer immediately. What you do is you wait for that deer to go and bed down. That deer instinctively will go back to where it beds, where it spends its time, and it will go back to that area. Then you use a dog to track it. So you wait 10, 12, 16 hours, whatever that may be, to let that deer go. Hopefully it has expired in that time, or if you get there and it is still alive, that you can put that deer down or that animal down, whatever it may be. And so with this, we are not talking about the magic 3 hours that we discussed in your office yesterday of when most of that one weekend of deer hunting happens. We are not talking about impacting that time whatsoever. And so that is why this bill is supported by a variety of hunting groups, a variety of deer hunting associations, and that is why I do not support your amendment.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Heintzman yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Heintzman, I don't know for sure, I think you probably deer hunt, but approximately how many deer are harvested in Minnesota by firearm each year?
The member from Crow Wing, Representative Heintzman.
Thank you for the question. More than one, Representative.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Eklund yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Eklund, I bet you know the answer to that question.
Representative Eklund.
I'm going to take a guess that it was around 160,000.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, that's correct. If he would continue to yield.
He will. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Eklund, generally speaking, there are some exceptions, but the general rule is how many deer are you allowed to shoot each year?
Representative Eklund.
Representative Hertaus, it's one per license. Some areas have bonus permits that you can get, but generally it's just one per individual.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, members, there's more than 250,000 licensed firearm deer hunters that go afield on the first Saturday of November. More than 250,000. I have hunted deer for 55 consecutive years and never missed a season. And so if you want to know where I'm at, you'll know I'm in the woods on the first Saturday of November. I'm very predictable. But here we are, as a matter of policy, we're writing law for one individual who can't see colors. Well, there's a code of ethics in hunting, members. You need to be aware that when you're hunting on public land, and if you're baiting for bear for months and weeks in advance, when it's legally permissible to begin baiting, you're aware of who the adjacent property owner is if you're hunting near private property. It's not onerous to make arrangements in advance to get permission from the landowner. Now, there are some bear where I own property, and if a bear hunter wanted to have access to the property while I'm not there, that's fine. Not a problem. But on opening deer hunting, you're asking me to surrender my property right to let someone come in with a dog, a canine, who, descendants of wolves and coyotes, leave a scent on the trail, leave a scent through your woods, mark on trees, and do everything they do, and you think that's okay. I would say, Representative Tabke, it is not. So my point is that this is really about property rights. Deer Hunters Association, all of these groups, that's fine. And they're certainly promoting that on public lands. And I don't care what you do on public lands. That's fine. But something central to our Constitution is the right to own property. And with owning property comes a certain bundle of rights. And that includes paying taxes. And so now you're going to take one more little stick out of that bundle of rights. Members, think about this. You're voting against individual property rights. I urge you to vote a green vote on the amendment. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering if Representative Becker-Finn will yield for a question.
Representative Becker-Finn.
Representative Becker-Finn. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Becker-Finn, are you a deer hunter?
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I am.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Becker-Finn, do all deer hunters feel the same way about this amendment?
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Freiberg, no. And I'm glad you asked me that question, because I think as we talk about the traditions of modern man, it's 2019, and some of those hunting traditions extend to modern women as well. As far as, and I did want to say too, as far as the imaginary scenario with the doe urine under your stand, that these are blood tracking dogs. So the dogs are tracking blood, not the doe urine that you're using to lure deer to your stand. And as far as the code of ethics and what this deer hunter thinks is, one of the most troubling things as a deer hunter is when you do wound an animal, and you have trouble finding that animal. There's really not, in my mind, it's a really terrible feeling. My worst memories of deer hunting are the times when there's been a wounded animal and we weren't able to track that animal. So I think as we talk about hunter ethics, I think that does extend to that aspect of this bill as well. So thank you for the question.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Becker-Finn.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would ask for a roll call.
Representative Hertaus requests a roll call. Are there 15 hands? There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Any further discussion to the amendment? The clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 53 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 680.
Third reading, discussion to the bill. Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak in favor of the bill. I am one of those hunters that has been in that scenario that was described, where you have the unfortunate situation of possibly wounding an animal. In my particular case, there's been 3 occasions where it immediately began to rain once the shot was made. In those situations, your blood trail oftentimes is gone. Any sign in the grass and leaves that might indicate the animal went this way or that way is disappearing or gone, and you're unable to follow that track. I think that having an opportunity to bring in an animal, a canine, and be able to locate that animal makes sense. Locate that deer or that bear. I'd also add that in the case of a scenario where you may be like me, and I got my family here today, they're often with me when I'm going and I'm tracking this deer or this animal, whatever the case. And that's going to leave some scent in the woods as well. And that's a difficult discussion, maybe. It can interrupt another hunter. And I'd try to be as sensitive as I can to that, but I do want a speedy recovery. And humans leave scent. A dog will leave scent. I understand the argument that a canine may be more disturbing, potentially, and in terms of the scent. But people, as we were hearing earlier, Representative Eklund mentioned how much effort folks go to have rubber boots and make sure the scent is removed from those items that will make contact with the ground or other material in the woods. But those are other things to be considered, and I think it's a good bill. I'll be supporting the bill. Thank you for bringing it forward, Representative Tabke.
Further discussion to the bill. Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in opposition to this bill, especially after Representative Tabke talked about his constituent waiting 12 to 8 hours before shopping for his wiener dog to go track these bear or deer into this property, in this private property. Whereas I think it's important that the hunter should first seek permission from the owner or make every attempt to contact the owner during that time, or use that 12 to 18 hours, to find someone who can see color. That would be my request, at least to have that in the bill. So I would ask members to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And just to that point, I would encourage people to look in the bill on line 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8. The trespass provisions in this section apply to activities under this section, including all requirements to gain permission to enter private or public property. I'd encourage people to vote for the bill. It's a good bill.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, thank you for the discussion, members. Basically, this is a bad day for standing up for property rights. And so in the interest of very few people out of a couple 100,000 deer that are harvested annually, of which there's been little or no problem or issue with this for more than 50 years, you're now requiring or making it onerous upon property owner to have to post the property around the entire perimeter in order to protect his property rights. So the burden is now on the property owner rather than some trespasser who just wants to go after a firearm or after an animal, a wounded animal. Now, Representative Tabke has mentioned that you need to find the animal so you can put it down. Well, Representative Tabke, you're not allowed to take a firearm onto the private property. So you're going to pursue an animal with a dog, and you're going to be chasing this animal further in, because they don't all die. And you're going to be chasing an animal all the way through somebody's private property, making a great opening weekend. Thank you, Representative Tabke. I urge a red vote on the bill.
Further discussion. The member from Ramsey, Representative Herr.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I rise to support Representative Tackey's bill. I am a hunter. I have been hunting for about 20 years. We hunt as a family. I have a brother who is colorblind, and I appreciate you putting this bill forward because when we do track, it's really challenging. So we always have to go as somebody has to go with him because he can't track on his own. And so I think that this makes it easier and actually less messy for somebody to track an animal, having less people on the property doing that. So I really appreciate that. And I did just want to say that we've been really talking about this as such a one-dimensional situation. And, you know, the deer hunting season, we talk about it like it's a one thing. It's a, you know, there's actually multiple parts of deer hunting season. There's bow season, there's gun season. It actually lasts longer than you know, just the one day we think of. The truth is that first day is actually the day you're going to be the luckiest because after that, the land sort of becomes contaminated, right? It's really difficult to hunt anyways. And if you don't get something on that first day or two, you're pretty much not going to have very much luck after that. If you didn't see one to begin with, you're not in the right spot, you're not doing the right things. And so really, I don't know how, even if the deer season were 5 months long, I don't know how this would change anything. And I did also just want it not to be lost upon us that this year I actually have been working a lot with hunting groups and trappers specifically who I met twice, once in my office and once at an event for them. And they don't get permission to trap, and you don't even know their traps are on your land, and you're more likely to have your dog get hurt in other things than to, you know, have conflict with a hunter and their dog coming in. And so I guess if we're going to sort of look at this and want to adjust this, we have to look at then not singling out, because the one thing I heard from those trappers is don't single us out, because when you create a law that just looks at what we do as trappers, you single us out. And I feel like we're doing the same thing by just putting, you know, although the amendment has already been defeated, I feel like the way Representative Tackey has this laid out is probably the most fair. And if we all talk about how much we love hunting and how great hunting is and how much we prepare, colorblind people love it as much, and they want to have as much of the thrill that people who are not colorblind have when they get to go through this too. And you know, you don't take your gun onto somebody's private property. When I've had to track a deer and put it down, I had to use a knife. And so I think that hunters already know what they're supposed to do and how they're going to do it. And so I think that we kind of convolute the situation when we bring in all of these what ifs and how and who doesn't know which piece of the law. The truth is hunters are some of the smartest, best people who know what they do. I've never seen a hunter a dog just bring some random dog who was wild and bites people to go hunting with them, because that's not productive for them either. So I think that a lot of the fears that we're feeling, people who hunt, we actually are really responsible about hunting. We actually are really responsible about the animals that we choose to attend with us, that we train them for years. We buy them as pups and as full breeds so that we can train them to do this. I have never met a hunter who just brought some random dog to go hunting with them. So I think some of these fears that we have, I don't want us to not vote green for this because we're afraid that all of these what ifs. I would suggest that we support Representative Tackey's bill. Thank you.
Any other members wishing to speak to the bill? Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick note. I feel like whenever the issue of colorblindness comes up, I sort of feel this obligation to speak since I do have red-green colorblindness myself. A couple of years ago, we added a provision into law allowing hunters to wear blaze pink, even though the science suggested it was hard for people such as myself to see that. And I actually tried some of those honestly, it hasn't affected me that much. I can't see certain shades of red and certain shades of green. But I did discover when trying on some N-chroma glasses that light pink is actually a color that I can't really see. It just looks like white to me. So the blaze pink, I imagine, I'm not a hunter myself, but I imagine that would cause me a problem, cause me some concern if there were people out there wearing blaze pink. You know, this... Thank you, Representative Lucero. That jacket is very impressive. I assume it's pink. And I kind of lost my train of thought with that. Representative Lucero's jackets kind of have that effect on people sometimes. Anyway, I sort of feel like hunting does put people such as myself at a disadvantage, especially when you add in blaze pink. So thank you, Representative Tabke. I appreciate your receptiveness, your willingness to learn about the issue, and how conscientious you are addressing the concerns of your constituents, including those who have color blindness. So other people with color blindness, such as me, truly appreciate it. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Isanti, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Is this the last bill on the calendar for the day?
This is the last bill on the calendar for the day, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd move that the House be allowed to meet past midnight.
He did say the words blaze pink, didn't he? The member from Hennepin, Representative Elkins. Any further discussion to the bill? The member from Clearwater, Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just for everybody here, I was handed an anonymous note earlier during the debate, and it clearly says, please vote against this bill. I want to be left alone. Signed, Bigfoot.
All other members wishing to speak on the bill, Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I just wanted to make a comment with regard to Representative Herr's comments. Representative Herr commented that deer hunters are among the smartest people that she knows, and so there's just a few of us in here. Thank you, Representative Herr.
Representative Tabke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to thank everyone for a very good conversation. It was a little longer than I expected, but I appreciate very much us having this great conversation. Just want to remind everyone that this is a bill that's supported by deer hunting associations across the state of Minnesota, and appreciate everyone's support and green vote for the bill. Thank you.
Clerk will take the roll. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 100 ayes and 24 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.